Hey folks, I'm Chris, and I'm your Commander Mechanic. Each week here on the channel, we like to talk about one of the core philosophies behind this fantastic format of Commander. And this week, we're talking about one of the key stats to deck building, mana curves. Almost any deck building tool you use will give you a visualizer for your mana curve. A few examples here. A lot of people brush past this important information when building a deck, but there's a lot to be unpacked and digested that will make you a better deck builder with just that information alone. Learning the intricacies of your deck and what mana costs you'll need to hit are an important part of the deck building process. Does your deck have a low curve with an average casting cost of 2 or 3? Or does your deck have a higher curve with a casting cost of 4 or 5 or higher? I'm looking at you, Tomer, with your 6 casting cost tribal deck. Knowing how to structure and build your deck around the points on your mana curve is crucial for ensuring that you can hit those milestones of mana relatively quickly. Know where your ramp needs to be to hit your sweet spot. Knowing how to structure your deck based around your average casting cost and the high points on your mana curve are crucial, because this informs things like how many lands should I be running? What spot should my mana rocks exist in? Do they need to be 0 casting cost, 1 casting cost, 2 casting cost, 3 or higher? This ensures that you are able to do what you want to do when you want to do it, and you aren't stuck with not enough lands, or you aren't stuck with expensive cards in hand with nothing to cast them with. Paying attention to your mana curve and your average casting costs also allows you to outpace your opponent. It's the player that's able to spend the most mana in a game that generally wins. There are some corner cases to this, but it's why mana ramp is such an important part of Commander, and why most competitive decks look to generate 3, 4, or 5 mana on turns 1 and 2. If you can cast more spells than your opponent, you're winning. So how does that and your mana curve work together? Well, if your deck has a very high concentration of 2 casting cost spells, you're going to want to ensure that you can hit 2 mana, 4 mana, and 6 mana as quickly and consistently as possible, because those are the benchmarks where you're, on average, going to be able to cast 1 spell a turn, 2 spells a turn, or 3 spells a turn. You'll want to ensure that your mana exists at the 0 casting cost level, things like Chrome Mox, Mox Opal, and Mana Crypt, to allow you to cast a 2 casting cost spell on turn 1. That's where you're going to get the most efficiency, because it means that you can potentially hit 3 or 4 or 5 mana on turn 2, casting 2 spells. And that's how you get ahead of your opponent. When they're still struggling with comes into play tapped lands, you're casting 2 or 3 spells a turn. There's a clear winner there. Conversely, with a curve heavy at the 3 casting cost, you'll want to ensure you're running a concentration of 1 casting cost mana acceleration, like Mana Dorks. Because if you can get down a Birds of Paradise or Deathrite Shaman on turn 1, it means you're going to be able to cast the majority of your deck on turn 2 as opposed to turn 3. And if you can do that, ensure that by odds and percentages, you're able to cast what you pull off the top of your library consistently, then you aren't going to be stuck in a situation where you've got 2 lands and a handful of 3 casting cost spells. Additionally, take into account how essential your commander is to your core strategy. Are they a combo piece or a value engine that you need to play in order for your deck to function? If that's the case, balance your mana curve, your mana ramp, and your mana base around getting to your commander's casting cost as soon as possible. Do you need to cast Neheb the Eternal for your deck to work at all? In that case, ensure you can reliably hit 5 mana sooner than turn 5. And this is where we can start to think about the lands we're selecting for our mana base. Because if you are running tapped lands, then consider every time you play a tapped land, you're setting yourself back a turn as opposed to ahead a turn. If you're playing a land that comes into play tapped, then you don't have that mana available that turn. If you need to hit 5 mana, and you've just played your 5th land, but it's not going to produce mana until turn 6, you've set yourself back a turn, not ahead a turn. The lower our mana curve, the less we can allow for lands that enter the battlefield tapped. Because if you need to hit 2 mana, but your turn 1 land enters tapped, you've essentially skipped one of your most important turns. If you need to hit 5 mana on turn 3, you need to ensure your lands aren't holding you back. I'll do a different video on lands coming up soon on the channel, particularly around comes into play tapped versus comes into play untapped lands, but consider the opportunity cost when including those in your deck. And when it comes to opportunity cost, make sure you aren't running lands that don't do anything for you before turn 5. Temple of the False God. To put this in a practical example, say I'm running a deck helmed by Riel the Everwise, and I'm full of 3 mana spells. I don't need Riel to win, but she's a massive value engine. Now my commander and the majority of my deck is 3 casting cost, so how do I get there as soon as possible? How do I make sure my deck starts working as soon as possible? This alone, making your deck work faster, is enough to move it up several power levels alone. In this example, where I need to hit 3 mana before turn 3, I'll want to ensure that I've loaded up my deck with 0 casting cost ramp and 1 casting cost ramp, so that I can ensure Riel comes down on turn 2 consistently. That means that I'm ahead of my mana curve, turn 2 making 3 mana. That's where the term ahead of the curve comes from. It's this kind of approach that's taken into account in a lot of competitive EDH decks. A critical mass of ramp, disruption, and game winners. But not everyone can reliably pack their decks with Chrome Mox, Mox Opal, Mox Diamond, Mana Crypt, Mana Vault, Grim Monolith, and other low casting cost mana acceleration. But everyone can ensure they're running Soul Ring, Signets, and Talismans. That's the difference that keeps decks out of the top of the power scale ranking. But look at it this way. If the majority of your mana ramp is in the 2 casting cost spot, but your lands enter the battlefield tapped, you're looking at an opportunity cost of not being able to cast 2 mana spells on turn 2, meaning you can't hit 4 mana on turn 3 or 5 mana on turn 4, and you can't play ahead of the curve. It's when your opponents start outpacing your mana production and the number of spells that they're able to draw and cast a turn is when you really start falling behind. So when you're deck building, look at some important data. Does your curve look like this? This means you can reliably get to the casting cost of most of your spells in your deck. This is a smooth mana curve. But if your curve is all over the place like this, chances are you're going to end up with uncastable cards in hand. And no matter how optimized your mana curve is, if the majority of your lands don't generate mana the turn they come into play, you're never going to be able to play on curve, let alone ahead of the curve. Let me know what you think about mana curves. How much consideration do you put on them when deck building? Is this something that you ignore entirely and just jam your favorite ramp and lands in? Or do you value color fixing more than playing on curve? I'm always interested to hear, and I'll build your feedback into upcoming philosophy videos as well. Until next time, If you've got a deck to submit for a tune-up, you can email me at cmdrmechanic@gmail.com or find me on Twitter at cmdrmechanic. Until next time, good luck and have fun. As always, keep in mind that Commander is about having fun your way, and all of this is just advice. There is no right or wrong way to play EDH. If you want to submit a deck for a tune-up, you can email me at cmdrmechanic@gmail.com or find me on Twitter at cmdrmechanic. Or you can even leave a comment on this video. I'll read them all. Be sure to like this video and subscribe for more tune-ups. Until next time, good luck and have fun.